3 weeks ago, one of my patients almost died, not because her blood pressure was too high, but because it was too perfect. Let me say that again, because this goes against everything you've been told. Stop aiming for 120 over 80. The real best blood pressure for seniors, might not be what you think. She didn't collapse in a hospital. She didn't have a stroke. She didn't even leave her kitchen. She stood up. That was it.
81-year-old Linda Parker lived alone in Phoenix, Arizona. She still drove herself to the grocery store, still carried her own bags, still spent weekends watching her grandkids. Independent, careful, doing everything right. Her last doctor's visit? Perfect. Blood pressure, 118 over 74, clean, controlled. Exactly what most people are told to aim for. Nothing to fix, nothing to worry about. Until that morning. She walked into the kitchen, reached for the coffee maker, and the second she stood upright, everything shifted. The room spun. Her vision dimmed. Her body hesitated for just a fraction too long. No warning, no time. She reached for the counter and missed. Her body hit the floor hard. At the hospital, the diagnosis came fast. Fractured hip, emergency surgery, weeks in rehab. And suddenly, the independence she had held on to for years was gone. All from standing up. Now think about that. A healthy, active 81-year-old doesn't just collapse like that without a reason. So I went back through her records. Every number looked perfect. Every note said she was stable. Every guideline had been followed. Her blood pressure? Controlled. No red flags, no warnings. Because on paper, she was doing everything right. But real life doesn't happen on paper. Something critical was being missed, and it was hiding behind a number we've trusted for decades. A number that, especially after 70, may quietly put you at risk without you realizing it. Before we go any further, I want you to do something simple. Drop your age in the comments, just your age. Because what I'm about to explain is very different if you're 65, 75, or 85. And if you've ever felt even slightly dizzy when standing up, add the word dizzy. That matters more than you think. If staying independent matters to you, not just living longer, but staying on your feet, pay close attention. And what shocked me the most was that every doctor who saw her chart thought she was doing everything right. In the next 7 minutes, you're going to find out what your blood pressure should actually be, and why the number you've been aiming for might be the one putting you in danger. And here's where everything changes, because Linda's story didn't end with the fall. That's where it started. When she was stabilized, I asked a simple question no one had asked yet. What happens to her blood pressure when she stands? So, we tested it. Lying down, after a few minutes of rest, her blood pressure was exactly what you'd expect. 118 over 74, calm, controlled, perfect. Then we had her stand up, and within seconds, her body told a completely different story. 92 over 58, a sudden drop, not small, not gradual. A collapse in pressure the moment she stood. And that's when everything made sense. Because what she felt in that moment wasn't random. She described it clearly. The room started spinning. My legs felt weak. It was like the ground just disappeared under me. That wasn't just dizziness. That was her brain not getting enough blood fast enough to stay upright. And it happened in seconds. No warning, no time to adjust. Just a silent drop, followed by a hard fall. So let me say this as clearly as possible. Her problem was not high blood pressure. It was what happened the moment she stood up. And that changes everything. Because if all you're looking at is a sitting number, what you see in a doctor's office, you're missing the most dangerous moment of the day. The moment when gravity shifts. The moment your body has to respond instantly. The moment your brain either gets enough blood or it doesn't. Now ask yourself this. How many people are being treated to perfect numbers while their bodies are quietly failing to keep up? How many people walk out of a clinic feeling reassured, only to feel that sudden wave of dizziness when they stand? How many close calls get dismissed as just getting older? Because Linda wasn't the first patient I've seen like this. And she won't be the last. But what made this case different was how clear the pattern was. Everything looked right on paper, but the moment her body was tested in real life, it failed. That's when I started looking deeper, not just at her numbers, but at what those numbers actually meant for someone her age. Because for decades, we've been taught one simple rule: lower is better. Get it down, keep it low, aim for perfect. But standing in that room, looking at her results, that rule didn't hold up anymore. That's when I realized something I hadn't fully accepted before. We might be chasing the wrong target in older adults. And if that's true, then a lot of people, maybe even you, are being guided toward a number that looks safe, but isn't. And if that makes you uncomfortable, it should, because this isn't just about one patient. This is about a pattern that most people never see coming. Now, before I take this further, let me quickly tell you who I am and why I'm telling you this. I'm Dr. Daniel Reeves. I've been treating older adults for over 20 years, and in that time, I've seen something shift. Not in theory, not in textbooks, in real patients. People who followed every rule, and still ended up in situations like Linda. So I started looking beyond individual cases. I started looking at the data, and what I found changed the way I think about blood pressure in older adults. A large study published in the United States followed over 15,000 adults aged 75 and older. Not for a few months, for 5 full years. These weren't perfect hand-picked patients. These were real people. Living at home, managing conditions, taking medications, just like most seniors across the country. The researchers tracked their blood pressure and then tracked what actually happened to them: falls, hospitalizations, kidney problems, survival. And when they broke the results down by blood pressure ranges, something unexpected showed up. The group with systolic blood pressure between 130 and 140 lived the longest. Not the lowest group. Not the people under 120. The moderate group. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The group with what we call perfect blood pressure, below 120, did worse. They had a 28% higher risk of serious falls and their overall mortality rate was higher. Let that sink in. The people who hit the target, the number everyone is told to aim for, were not the ones doing best. The group with perfect blood pressure actually did worse. And if that doesn't challenge what you've been told your entire life, it should. Because for decades, the message has been simple. Lower is better. Get it down, keep it down, stay under control. But this data tells a different story, at least for older adults. This goes against everything most people have been told. And if we don't understand why, we keep repeating the same mistake, chasing a number that looks right on paper, while ignoring what the body actually needs to stay upright, stable, and safe. And that brings us to the real question. If lower isn't always better, then what is actually happening inside the body after 70 that changes the rules completely? And that brings us to the real question. If lower isn't always better, then what actually changes inside your body as you get older? Because the truth is, your body at 75 is not just an older version of your body at 45. It works differently. And if you don't understand these changes, you can follow every piece of cardiologist advice, every blood pressure tip, and still end up at risk. Let me walk you through this in a way that actually makes sense. First, your arteries change. When you're younger, your blood vessels are flexible. They expand and absorb pressure every time your heart beats. But as you age, those arteries become stiffer. Think of it like an old garden hose left out in the Arizona sun. When it's new, it bends easily. Water flows smoothly. But after years in the heat, it hardens. It resists movement. That's exactly what happens inside your body. Now when your heart pumps, those stiff arteries don't absorb pressure the same way. So your body needs a slightly higher baseline pressure just to push blood where it needs to go, especially up to your brain. That's why the best blood pressure for seniors lowering it too much doesn't improve flow. It reduces it, especially when you stand. Which brings us to the second change. Your body reacts slower than you think. When a younger person stands up, their body adjusts instantly. Blood vessels tighten, heart rate increases, blood pressure stabilizes almost immediately. You don't feel anything, but as you age, that response slows down. Not by minutes, by seconds. But those seconds matter. Because when you stand up, gravity pulls blood downward, and your brain has to respond fast. If it doesn't, you feel it. That moment when the room spins, that brief wave of dizziness, that feeling like your balance is just slightly off. Your brain waits just a little too long, and in that delay, your blood pressure drops. That's the real answer to a question many people ask. Why do I get dizzy when I stand up? It's not random. It's your system reacting slower than it used to, combined with pressure that may already be too low. Now the third piece, and this is where things get even more important. Your medications don't behave the same way anymore. At 45, your body processes medication efficiently. Your liver breaks it down, your kidneys clear it out. But at 75 or 80, that process slows down. So the same dose you've been taking for years lasts longer, hits harder, and lowers your blood pressure more than intended. I've seen patients come in with great numbers on paper. But when we look closer, those numbers are being pushed down by medication that's now too strong for their physiology. And that's where the risk begins. Because what used to protect you can now push you too far. Too low when sitting, and dangerously low when standing. Which is exactly how situations like Linda's happen. Everything looks controlled, everything follows the rules, but underneath, the system is struggling to keep up. And that's the part most people never see. Because no one ever explained that the best way to check blood pressure at home, it's understanding what happens when your body moves, when you stand, when your system is tested in real life. Because that's where the real risk shows up. And once you see that clearly, you start to realize something that changes everything. And once you see that clearly, you start to realize something most people completely miss. It's not just about how to control blood pressure. It's about knowing which number actually keeps you safe in real life. Let me show you what I mean. A few months after Linda's case, I saw another patient. 78-year-old Robert Jenkins, different lifestyle, different history, but a number that would make most doctors react immediately. His blood pressure? 142/86. Now, if you follow standard blood pressure tips, that number might sound too high. You might expect medication, adjustments, a plan to push it down closer to 120/80. But here's the difference. Robert wasn't dizzy. He wasn't falling. He walked every morning, played golf twice a week, lived independently. No medications, no symptoms, stable. 10 years ago, I would have looked at that number and treated him aggressively. I would have tried to bring it down fast, but today, I wouldn't. Because now I understand something I didn't fully appreciate before. That number, 142/86, might actually be closer to the best blood pressure for seniors, not perfect on paper, but functional in real life. And that's what matters. Because when you compare Linda and Robert side by side, Linda had the perfect number. Robert didn't. But Linda fell. Robert didn't. That's the difference between chasing numbers and understanding physiology. So the real question becomes this. How do you know if your blood pressure is actually safe for you? Not just in a doctor's office, but when you're living your life? That's where this next step matters. Because there is a simple way to find out. A test that takes less than 3 minutes. No special equipment beyond what you already have at home. And yet, almost no one is doing it. Here's exactly how it works. Lie down on your bed or couch. Stay there for 5 minutes. Let your body fully relax. Then check your blood pressure. Write it down. That's your baseline. Now stand up. Immediately. And check your blood pressure again. Don't wait. Don't walk around. Measure it right away. Now compare the two numbers. If your systolic pressure drops by more than 20 points, or your diastolic drops by more than 10 points, that's a red flag. That means your body is struggling to maintain blood flow when you stand. That's when dizziness happens. That's when balance disappears. That's when falls begin. This directly answers one of the most common questions people ask. Why do I get dizzy when I stand up? Because your blood pressure may be dropping too much in that moment, even if it looks perfect when you're sitting still. And here's what makes this so important. Most people only check their blood pressure one way: sitting, calm, still. But that doesn't reflect real life. Real life involves movement, standing, walking, reaching. And if your body can't maintain pressure in those moments, that's where the risk is. That's why the best way to check blood pressure at home, it's about understanding how your body responds to change, because that's where safety or danger reveals itself. This is one of the simplest tests, and one of the most overlooked. And once you do it, you may start to see your numbers in a completely different way. Because the goal isn't just to hit a target, it's to stay upright, stable, and in control of your life. And once you understand that, everything about how to control blood pressure starts to change, because now you're not just asking, what's a good number? You're asking a better question. What is the best blood pressure for older adults in real life? Not on paper, not in a textbook, but in your daily life, standing, walking, living. Here's what the research and years of real patient care are telling us. If you're between 65 and 74, a systolic blood pressure around 130 to 140 is often appropriate. If you're between 75 and 84, that range shifts slightly higher, 135 to 145. And if you're over 85 or more physically fragile, a range closer to 140 to 150 may actually be safer. Now I want you to notice something. Those numbers are higher than what most people think is normal. Higher than 120 over 80, because the best blood pressure for seniors is not about being the lowest. It's about being the most stable. Stable enough to keep blood flowing to your brain. Stable enough to keep you on your feet. Because here's the reality of aging in America. Many people over 70 live alone. They drive themselves to appointments. They carry groceries. They go up and down stairs every day. And one fall changes everything. Loss of independence, hospital stays, long recoveries, sometimes a permanent shift in how you live. That's why this matters. This isn't just about numbers. This is about protecting your ability to live your life on your terms. So what should you do starting today? First, start checking your blood pressure at home consistently. Not once in a while, daily. Morning and evening. Because that's the best way to check blood pressure at home, to see patterns over time, not just one isolated reading. Second, do the standing test we just talked about. That simple 3-minute check can tell you more about your real risk than a perfect reading in a clinic. Third, pay attention to your body. If you feel dizzy when you stand, if your balance feels off, if you ever ask yourself, why do I get dizzy when I stand up? Don't ignore that. That's your body giving you information. And finally, have a different conversation with your doctor. Don't just ask, is my blood pressure normal? Ask, what is the best blood pressure for my age and my lifestyle? Because your target should be personal, not just a number pulled from a general guideline. Now let me take you back to Linda. After her fall, we didn't just send her home and hope for the best. We adjusted her medications. We allowed her blood pressure to come up slightly, into a range that actually supported her body. We monitored her standing readings. We paid attention to symptoms. And something important happened. The dizziness stopped. The instability faded. She regained confidence moving around her home. She got her independence back, not because we chased perfection, but because we understood what her body actually needed. And that's the lesson I want you to remember. We didn't make her blood pressure perfect. We made her safe. If you're over 70, check this tonight. And if you know someone living alone, someone who values their independence, share this with them. Because the number you've been aiming for might not be the one that protects you. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone close to you, your friends, your family, so you can protect each other from the hidden risks that come with aging. Leave a comment below. What matters most for you to stay independent? I'd love to read your thoughts. Because next time, I'll be sharing something most people never talk about. Chew this before bed. Watch your memory come back strong in just 10 days. Thank you for watching, and remember, your best years aren't behind you.